Hello, my name is Stephen Lemieux, and today I'll be speaking to you about corticosteroid dosing strategies in patients with COVID 19 who exhibit ARDS and cytokine storm. The role of corticosteroids in COVID 19 is highly dependent on disease severity. While not recommended in patients with more mild presentations of COVID 19 who don't require hospitalization or are hospitalized but not requiring supplemental oxygen, the benefits of corticosteroids are more pronounced in those who exhibit hypoxemia and require supplemental oxygen. And as the degree of hypoxemia from COVID 19 worsens, the benefits of corticosteroids are amplified. Appropriately, in cases of severe disease such as ARDS requiring invasive mechanical ventilation or ECMO, the NIH issues a strong recommendation for the use of corticosteroids in COVID 19. Historically, prior to the COVID 19 pandemic, systemic corticosteroids recommended for ARDS have typically been either methylprednisolone or dexamethasone. Given that it's the anti inflammatory effects of corticosteroids which are desirable in the treatment of ARDS, both methylprednisolone and dexamethasone are considered preferred agents given their potent glucocorticoid effects, which repress signaling from nuclear factor kappa B and ultimately precipitate downregulation of the pro inflammatory cytokines that contribute to the pathogenesis of ARDS. Methylprednisolone and dexamethasone are preferred over hydrocortisone in ARDS, given that hydrocortisone possesses a considerable amount of mineralocorticoid activity, leading to volume retention, which is potentially detrimental in these patients. Clinically, this is translated into significant improvements in mechanical ventilator free days when methylprednisolone and dexamethasone have been studied in ARDS patients in the past. The desirable characteristics of methylprednisolone and dexamethasone have also translated into improvements in mortality when initiated within 14 days of ARDS onset. And while methylprednisolone has also been shown to exhibit superior lung penetration and residence time in the lungs compared to other corticosteroids, both agents are generally considered suitable for the treatment of ARDS. For ARDS attributable to COVID 19, methylprednisolone received a considerable amount of attention in the early stages of the pandemic. In an observational study from Wuhan published in March of 2020, it was demonstrated that among COVID 19 patients with ARDS, 46% of the patients who received methylprednisolone died, and 61.8% of the patients who did not receive methylprednisolone died, which led the investigators to conclude that methylprednisolone reduced the risk of death in COVID 19 patients with ARDS. It's worth noting that a wide range of methylprednisolone dosing regimens have been utilized in patients with COVID 19, so it's unclear what the optimal dose and duration of methylprednisolone is at this point in time. Now, earlier in 2020, dexamethasone generated a lot of excitement when the results of the DEXA-ARDS trial were published and showed that in patients with moderate to severe ARDS, dexamethasone significantly improved ventilator-free days and all-cause mortality at 60 days compared to a control group. An additional advantage gained from using dexamethasone in ARDS patients is that it has a long biological half-life in the range of 36 to 54 hours. So upon completing the course of treatment, dexamethasone will undergo a prolonged autotaper, which serves to prevent a rebound increase in pro-inflammatory markers and subsequently a worsened cytokine storm upon discontinuation of corticosteroids in these patients. Fittingly, an open label trial which investigated the addition of dexamethasone to usual care in hospitalized patients with COVID 19 was conducted. Given at a dose of 6 milligrams daily for up to 10 days or until hospital discharge, the use of dexamethasone was associated with significant improvement in 28-day all cause mortality. Of note, significant improvements in 28-day mortality were only observed among those COVID 19 patients who required invasive mechanical ventilation or supplemental oxygen without invasive mechanical ventilation. Among hospitalized patients with COVID 19 who did not require supplemental oxygen, mortality was actually higher in the patients who received dexamethasone compared to those who did not. And in another subgroup analysis of 28-day all-cause mortality, it was observed that patients experienced a significant mortality benefit from dexamethasone only when it was initiated beyond 7 days from symptom onset. When initiated in 7 days or less from the time of symptom onset, we once again saw a higher mortality rate in patients who received dexamethasone compared to those who received usual care alone. The explanation for this is likely because in the initial stage of COVID 19, patients are in the viral response phase where viral replication is prevalent. Immunosuppression may allow for further viral replication and is likely detrimental in this phase. Therefore, corticosteroids are best avoided in the initial stage of COVID 19. It's once the host inflammatory response becomes more pronounced later on that immunosuppression with corticosteroids is more desirable, and suppression of the immune system will lessen the development of organ failure and ultimately mortality from this disease. Thank you for your attention.